Chapter 3, Day 3, 10:03 a.m. Berlin, Germany. Calla smiled as she gazed out her window. The vibrant metropolis drew into form from behind the clouds. Soon the plane started its descent over the overcast city. After the 90-minute flight from Gatwick, Berlin, built over centuries on the banks of the Spree River, was home to more bridges than Venice. Strewn with cultural paradoxes and markers of science, the arts, politics, and media, she reached for her overnight carry-on and stepped off the aircraft after landing. Sun peered through scattered clouds, lightening her anguish. Outside the main arrival terminal, Calla waited her turn in the long queue for a cab. Several minutes later, one rolled toward her, and a cab driver sprang out, hopping to the curb with a buoyant spring. Wohin, Fräulein, where to? Calla grabbed her carry-on. To the Pergamon Museum? He smiled, showing a grin littered with gold teeth. Any suitcases, Fräulein? His English was accented but understandable as she stepped into the car. No, I travel light. By the time they navigated past Adenauerplatz, in the heart of former West Berlin, Calla was running late. Traffic crawled, a stark contrast to central London that morning. She settled into the leather seat and glanced over her shoulder, watching as the car turned down another street. Was it the constant smirks she received from the driver? They seemed to come every 5 minutes as he beamed gold teeth, looking back in the rearview mirror. Though good-humored enough, he conversed little during the journey. A nagging sensation haunted her. It had started at Gatwick Airport, then through customs. She peeked once more in the rear window. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Calla checked her watch. 10:55. Her appointment was in 5 minutes. How much further driving? Nicht weit, not far, not far. Another 10 minutes, maybe. Calla opened her shoulder bag and dipped her hands deep to locate her electronic tablet. She fished it out and turned it on. The itinerary showed that at 11 o'clock, they were to meet Herr Brandt, the director of the museum, for a private tour of the Pergamon, accommodating 3 galleries. Work then began at 11:30 in a private museum room. The taxi nosed into a parking space on the busy street, several meters from the main doors. We're here, the Pergamon Museum, Fräulein. The triple-wing complex on Berlin's Museum Island stood perched above the edge of the Spree River, its neoclassical structure reflected in the water below against the blue sky and scattered clouds. It looked even more palatial than she had imagined. The prominent landmark had sustained severe damage in the war during the air raids on Berlin. Calla was confident in her assessment. Though the legitimacy of some collections remained controversial within its vast walls, the Pergamon showcased antiquities, Islamic art, and Babylonian architecture she desperately wanted to see. She wanted to discuss the Market Gate of Miletus and the Ishtar Gate, including the processional way of Babylon and the Mashata Fasada with Allegra. I think you're in for a long wait, the taxi driver said. We'll let you out here, Fräulein. Crowds lined the building's entrance as the late morning sun peeked through the clouds. Calla glanced outside and nodded her thanks. Danke schön. I can walk from here. Where's the main entrance? He pointed ahead. Up the stairs. I don't think you can go in today. So much trouble is going on. For trouble? Calla reached in her pocket, searching for the euros she'd withdrawn at the airport cash machine upon arrival. She handed the taxi driver a 50-euro note. Keep the change. The taxi driver drove off, leaving Calla standing in front of the stairs leading to the entrance. Police fenced the entry grounds of the museum. Perhaps there was another way in. She advanced toward the growing queue. Only a few yards ahead, the entrance remained closed. Calla stood on her toes, glancing above a group of French students in front of her. She scrutinized the glass facades. Authorities appeared to have evacuated the museum and had quarantined several evacuees. They waited in an orderly queue on the other side of the main doors. The cab driver was right. The queue hadn't moved an inch in the 5 minutes she'd waited. When the group in front of her made a move, she edged closer to the entryway. Streams of others made their way off the island. Where was the Pergamon pass Allegra had sent her last night by courier? A police officer with a megaphone attempted a multi-language announcement down the queue. Das Museum ist geschlossen. The museum is closed. Le musée est fermé, belted the foghorn voice from within the crowd. Calla found the laminated pass and a bundle of papers at the bottom of her bag. She stopped the officer when he got to her section of the queue. Entschuldigen Sie bitte. Her German was confident. Darf ich bitte rein? She said, excusing herself and asking if she could go in. The officer didn't move a muscle. Nein, es tut mir leid. No, why? She said. He continued his parade down the queue, and she began a chase after him. Excuse me, sir, my colleague Allegra Driscoll is working with the board of the museum. Here's my pass. I'm meeting her here. The cop didn't flinch, but he understood her. I'm sorry. Nobody is going in today. Now move aside. Calla patted her pockets for her cell phone. The one Mason had given her was in her carry-on. She'd configured it the night before she left London. It was a costly system with a sophisticated GPS program to identify her preset numbers and personal details. With this, she could locate Allegra. Her own smartphone, though more primitive, was in her left jacket pocket. A local service provider picked up the device, and her fingers moved quickly, typing a prompt message to Allegra. Pulled up at the entrance. Are you inside? Calla. Noon rays hit her face, warming her cheeks, making it seem more like a midsummer afternoon. Calla glanced upward as irritation thundered through her. She video-dialed Allegra. No pickup. The voicemail came on. She sent another text message. I can't get into the museum. I'm off to the hotel. Her throat tightened as she placed the phone in her pocket. How interesting that we carry cell phones with us, but choose not to be reached when we're most needed. Calla zipped her head round, following the German-accented male voice from behind. Prying eyes speared into her. The voice had come from a sneering gentleman. He was a few feet away. She ignored his remark. He caught her gaze and maneuvered closer, extending a firm handshake. I'm Manfred Behrman. Not from Berlin, are you? Calla raised an eyebrow. What gave me away? You seem a little lost. Could you tell me why the Pergamon is closed today? She asked. I take it you've not been keeping up with German news? She shook her head. Please, allow me to explain. Behrman wore a dark trench coat with a trilby hat pinched at the sides and could have come straight off a 1940s film set. As they ambled a few feet from the queue, Callie detected hints of tobacco. Cigars, maybe? He led her from the dispersing line toward a bench on the museum grounds. Callie glanced back at the glass entrance. Police, efficient in manner, questioned everyone. One by one, the officers took down statements and checked identities. The German media has been reporting about ancient artifacts that went missing from Berlin vaults during the war, Behrman began. You see, these are due to be returned and inaugurated at the Pergamon today. What artifacts? Aren't you familiar with the Pergamon Museum or Berlin's cultural history? This is a big inauguration for Berlin. I assume. You assumed wrong, she said, twitching her lips. The museum closed in 1939 at the outbreak of war. In 1943, it took just a few hours to destroy it. One of the chief treasures in Berlin's proud cultural heritage, the Pergamon, burned as British bombs blasted holes in its structure late in November 1943. Should I carry on? She said, smirking. Behrman made a move to speak, but was cut off. The topping destroyed the entire West Wing in February 1945. In the last days of the war, battles on the museum's grounds between the SS and the Russian Red Army forces left its walls blackened and its exhibition rooms destroyed. Shall I continue? He opened his lips to speak. Several precious items from the museum's collection were removed and hidden in mine shafts. Most were preserved. They looted many others at the end of the war. Then, the Russians returned much of this so-called trophy art from 1955 to 1960. including the Pergamon altar. Bierman let out a short cough. You're well informed, she grimaced. I should be. After all, I look after an entire division at the British Museum. Calla averted his gaze and placed dark glasses over her eyes. I know what I need to. um, Now, have you heard of Priam's treasure? Callan knew, but somehow he filled her in with great pride as several new police vehicles arrived. Except for the last police evacuees, the crowds had vacated the open plaza. Sirens blared across the bridge, and Calla and Bierman stopped to watch the commotion. A moment later, Bierman leaned in. Priam's treasure is one of those collections we've been waiting for since they stole it from us during the war. In 1945, it was taken from a protective bunker underneath the Berlin Zoo, only 2 kilometers from here. Calla drew back. Didn't German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann discover the artifacts, mostly gold, copper shields, and weapons in Anatolia in 1837? Yes, but, she continued, if I'm correct, he named them after Priam, king of Troy. Schliemann smuggled the loot to Berlin, convinced he'd found proof of the Iliad's ancient city. That's right. It's a treasure of gold and other artifacts from ancient Troy. Schliemann discovered it when he excavated a hill in the Ottoman Empire around 1873, he added. She pursed her lips. But that's a debatable fact, Herr Bierman. Nevertheless, the treasure is priceless. He leaned forward, catching Calla off guard. She edged back as he attempted a whisper in her ear. There's more, he said. More? The other little secret is that 5 governments know there's another treasure within the cache, Bierman added. One that was planted, or hidden, should I say. The Hadrius manuscript. Calla raised an eyebrow. How did he know about the Hadrius? Classified information. Although she'd come late into the talks about Task Force Carbonado, they had publicized nothing about the Hadrius. She'd not read the full brief, but many wanted the manuscript. Bierman smirked, grabbing her full attention. The Hadrius manuscript has vanished repeatedly over the decades. Many are now attempting to determine its true value. It's priceless. And how so? Is written in the same script as the Voynich document, they say. He bit his lip. Until yesterday, many believed the Voynich language was a made-up medieval farce. Thanks to the Hadrius, today, they are eating their words. Calla debated whether to entertain his story or move on about her business. How do you know this? She asked. I got around. She lifted a brow. I guess so. You still with me? Bierman asked. Her nod edged him further into his story. Last night, a museum worker was inspecting the items to go on display, and he found the manuscript within Priam's treasure. My guess is whoever stashed it there hoped no one would find it. How do you know? Bierman reached into his trench coat and pulled out a business card. I work for RTL, the German media station. She inspected the card but made no move to take it. Calla suspected he'd paid for the information. A museum worker must have sold him this story. She shuffled her feet on the concrete as a warm breeze caressed her face. I can see the pride the museum would have in returned artifacts, but not enough reason to cause a tourist standstill. He replaced his card. There's no verified record of the document's existence, yet 5 Western governments are in a bidding war for it. It was last seen in the 60s. From what I hear, someone secretly circulated photographs. Calla probed him further, interested in his version of the rumors. What's so fascinating about the Hadrius manuscript? Bierman pulled out a cigarette from his jacket pocket. With a slight sneer, he tapped it on an overused cigarette case and lit it with an expensive lighter. He let out a little laugh. It's written in a language and symbols no one has ever understood. Cryptographers made comparisons with the Voynich decades ago, before the Hadrius disappeared. The manuscript's age isn't determined, and carbon dating tests have left debates as to its actual age. The fumes he puffed stung Calla's nostrils, confirming her decision never to take up smoking when offered in high school. She fanned them from her face. Where does the Hadrius come from? He blew the smoke away and took another puff, something many are questioning. Calla scanned his face. What do you think the manuscript says? Bierman finished his cigarette and tossed it to the ground. He shrugged. Some believe its contents infer military tactics. Others say it contains insights into world creation. The more adventurous ones think it's a treasure map of some sort. Whether you believe any of these myths or just value the manuscript for its own historical interest, it still makes it valuable. Look at this. He fished for a document from his leather briefcase and shoved it in her hands. Calla recognized the memo, a scan of various classified documents identical to those shared 2 days ago in London. With a rise in afternoon temperature, she shifted her feet, pulling back her hair into a makeshift chignon. Bierman retrieved the paper and slotted it in his case. A specialist has arrived today who can translate it. She'd heard enough, and her thoughts transferred back to Allegra as the light hit her eyes. It all made sense now. Allegra's historical and linguistic expertise with ancient manuscripts would be invaluable here. She must have known about this all those months ago when she'd invited Calla to her house to discuss the manuscript. Thank you for the history lesson, Herr Bierman, but I must go. I'm meeting someone, and I'm late. Want to know why the museum has been evacuated? Calla had almost forgotten. 2 hours ago, I heard Priam's treasure was stolen from the museum vaults. Calla paused. That's impossible. Oh, yes. She checked the museum entrance again. Allegra had to be inside. Calla rose. Vispata hail, Bierman. Bye for now. Aware she wouldn't get any closer to the entrance, she sent a new text message to Allegra. Can't get into the museum. Please meet me at the hotel? Eyes blinking, Calla turned to see if Bierman had gone. How had he gotten such classified data in under 48 hours? She proceeded the same way she'd come, down the concrete stairs and over the small bridge. Calla zipped her head forward toward the street. A hurrying pedestrian jolted her. The blow to her chest threw her off balance in one forceful shove. Calla lost her footing and plummeted to the ground, landing on the concrete with her hands under her chest. Raising her head, she locked eyes with a towering figure who then hurried through the tourists standing by. When she opened